What's the message to Iran?
Don't.
What is your message to Iran in this moment?
Don't.
I'm gonna bomb the shit out of them. It's true. I don't care.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
Welcome to the D- Diaries, Messy Democracy by Jim Jones. We hope you enjoy this podcast while you drive, ride, roam, or drone. Warning: this is not going to be a typical D- Diaries story. It may very well be a rant. Do you like seafood? If you care about Americans, you should probably stop eating it. When I was a kid, I got into a lot of fights. Some were probably stupid kid things, some were just bullies, and a couple were 2 or 3 kids on me at once. I was 17 and working at a grocery store. I stopped by the store one night, and this boy and his friend came walking out and grabbed me, and one pulled a knife on me and said he was going to kill me. I pushed him and ran inside. I told the manager. The one who pulled the knife on me had a girlfriend who worked there. I was not sure what this was about, but I did not like it. Neither did my boss. He told me he had problems with him before. The next day, my friend Jeff, who worked there too, and I went by the store, and there this guy was sitting in his car by himself. I told Jeff, "Go tell him if he still wants me to meet me out back." I went to see the manager, and the manager said, "Good, I'm tired of him." We went out the back door, and a moment later he came walking around ready for a fight. Before he could say his first word, I hit him so hard it broke his glasses in half. Although he was slightly bigger than I was a varsity wrestler in school. I knew if I got him on the ground, he was done. After a few minutes, his face and ribs were busted pretty badly, blood everywhere, and my manager had to pull me off. There are times in life when you must take things seriously. Sometimes that lesson shows up on a playground, sometimes it shows up on the world stage. Right now, we are in 2 wars at once, a shooting war with Iran and a quieter war of propaganda and protest here at home. Some people only stop when they are hit back hard enough to understand you are serious. The war did not start last week. As the world knows, the US and Israel have been bombing the crap out of Iran and killing most of its senior leadership. The first strike hit at 1:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Saturday. By 5 p.m., Charleston, South Carolina was among the first cities to launch a No War with Iran emergency protest at Marion Square with roughly 70 people. Within hours, similar protests were happening in most large cities. As soon as the cameras fired up, the same people who yelled at and threatened the U.S. military and intelligence community over the actions against the Venezuelan drug boats and the capture of Maduro were back on TV like the screaming kid in a restaurant. Talking heads and social media posts blasted across the bandwidth, telling us, "We did not vote to send our troops to war, Trump did not get congressional permission," and invoking the War Powers Act. Some of these are elected politicians, supposedly lawmakers, who do not seem to know the Constitution or the laws they claim to defend. This week, both the Senate and the House took up a War Powers resolution aimed at stopping ongoing U.S. military operations in Iran, and both efforts failed to advance. For now, Trump retains broad freedom to continue the Iran campaign, leaving Congress with only a few remaining levers: another war powers push, refusing to fund additional operations, and political pressure. Under the 1973 War Powers Resolution, he can continue hostilities for 60 days from the start of operations without new authorization, and beyond that if Congress does not force a withdrawal or cut off funds. Of course, depending on where you get your information, you were told that Trump could not do this, yet he did have the authority. Under the War Powers Resolution, the president must formally notify Congress within 48 hours of introducing U.S. forces into hostilities. Trump ordered the major U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran on Saturday, February 28th, and the White House submitted its official War Powers notification to Congress on Monday, March 2nd, which falls within that 48-hour window. Modern media is confusing, conflicting stories, fake social media accounts, AI-generated pictures, and videos that look more real every day, but you can control what you know. You do not need a law degree to figure this stuff out. You have AI, search engines, and yes, even the library. Start with a simple question. Does the president, the commander-in-chief, have to ask Congress for permission to conduct military operations? The answer is no. The president can initiate hostilities. Only later does the war powers resolution clock start ticking on how long forces can stay engaged without explicit authorization. If your news source tells you something different about something as important as combat, national security, or nuclear weapons, that is not a minor mistake. It is a trust problem. When the basics are wrong, the outrage is manufactured. At that point, the responsible move is not to yell louder, it is to change where you get your information. Protest is not new, but this is different. When troops came back from World War II, America loved them, and most still do. On the other hand, my brother was in Vietnam. He came back to a country split between those who hated the military and those who appreciated it. Protest in America is nothing new. Even the Boston Tea Party was a protest. By the late 1960s, Vietnam coincided with television coverage of combat, the draft hitting a large baby boomer cohort, and the broader civil rights and student movements, producing an unusually broad and visible anti-war coalition. When I look at the protesters from the 70s, I see the same people protesting today, except now we have sworn politicians engaged in encouraging protest against their own military and intel community in the middle of an active fight. Early this week, I saw Jane Fonda back on TV addressing an anti-Iranian attack protest group. In July 1972, Jane Fonda, who would soon be branded Hanoi Jane by outraged veterans and many Americans, spent about 2 weeks in North Vietnam touring bombed villages, factories, hospitals, and American prisoners, then delivering English-language broadcasts criticizing U.S. bombing and calling the war immoral and unjust. On her last day, she was taken to a North Vietnamese military site where she donned a helmet, sang with troops, and posed laughing while seated at an anti-aircraft gun used to shoot at American planes. Once those images were published, they cemented the Hanoi Jane label as a symbol of giving moral support to the enemy. Around the same era, she also helped launch the FTA tour, Free the Army / Fuck the Army, a traveling anti-war show that played near U.S. bases to entertain GIS while urging them to oppose the war, criticize military leadership, and in some cases resist or refuse participation in Vietnam. I have 3 generations of paratroopers in my family. Without blinking, my family has been in almost every conflict since World War II, except the Gulf War. My uncle was behind enemy lines before D-Day as an intelligence officer. My dad and most of my uncles were in World War II. My son has had 5 deployments between Iraq and Afghanistan. I never worried about my son when he was overseas. He volunteered. He was a paratrooper in special operations. I'd spent 33 years in special ops, in uniform and as a civilian, and I'd been to a lot of memorials. Like most dangerous jobs, and like life itself, there is risk every day. Pretending otherwise feels like a dishonor to the people who sign up knowing that risk is part of the deal. The other day, 6 pilots were shot down by friendly fire. At least one was a female. Probably a design flaw, but her parachute had almost the same colors as the Iranian flag. When armed Kuwaitis came upon her and she told them she was an American, she was treated with dignity and respect, which would be more respect than she would get in the middle of these protests in America. Iran's war on us. The truth is, this conflict did not start last week. After the 1979 revolution, Iran's leadership shifted from the Western-backed Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi to the theocratic rule of Ayatollah Khomeini, who returned from exile on February 1st and consolidated power as supreme leader by the end of that year, embedding clerical authority at the top of the new Islamic Republic. Within weeks, the regime's rhetoric cast the United States as the Great Satan, and anti-American slogans quickly became a core part of revolutionary identity rather than a side current of dissent. The Death to America campaign did not emerge years later as a reaction to U.S. policy. It was woven into the revolutionary moment almost from day one, with protesters chanting it outside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in early 1979 and throughout the subsequent hostage crisis. The seizure of the U.S. Embassy on November 4, 1979, by militant students was the moment. Revolutionary anti-Americanism moved from rhetoric to a sustained state-backed act of coercive diplomacy, resulting in 66 Americans taken hostage and a 444-day crisis that redefined U.S.-Iran relations. In April 1980, the United States launched Operation Eagle Claw, a daring but ultimately failed mission to rescue those hostages from the Iranian desert. The operation left 8 American servicemen dead and exposed serious weaknesses in how our forces planned and executed special operations, but it also forced a reckoning that would change the military for the next half-century. From the early 1980s onward, Tehran exported its revolutionary model by building and sponsoring a network of militant organizations, what is often called the Axis of Resistance, that includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and a web of Shia militias in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Since 1979, Iran and its proxies have been linked to dozens of major attacks on Americans, from the Tehran embassy hostage crisis to the 1983 Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, the 1996 Khobar Towers attack in Saudi Arabia, and lethal operations against U.S. forces in Iraq during the 2000s. This does not include the attacks on their own people or Israel. During the Biden administration, Iran and its aligned militias dramatically intensified proxy warfare, conducting hundreds of rockets, mortars, and drone attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria, and sometimes those threats reach closer to home. Early Sunday morning, a gunman opened fire outside Buford's bar on Austin's West 6th Street, killing 3 people and wounding more than a dozen others before police shot him dead in what authorities are calling one of the city's worst recent mass shootings. The attacker has been identified as 53-year-old naturalized U.S. citizen Ndiaga Diagne. He was reportedly wearing a Property of Allah sweatshirt and a shirt with Iranian flag colors or symbols, and investigators say they are treating the case as a possible act of terrorism with a potential link to recent tensions with Iran, while also considering the possibility that this was a lone actor attack. The threat to the U.S. is always a concern. Remember 9/11, etc. This is still threats coming from Iran and its echo chamber. As much as we have spent on securing the border and the Patriot Acts invading our everyday life, we still do not know who is in the country. While Trump ran on removing illegal aliens, the protesters protest and sue the government. Counterterrorism folks are already talking about sleeper cells, not as a movie script but as a real planning problem. Some of those cells may be directed by Iran or its proxies. Some are lone sympathizers who slipped through our borders or have been here for years, and all of them are watching the same protests and shutdown fights we are. When the Department of Homeland Security is fighting for resources in the middle of a war with the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, and Senate Democrats are the ones holding up full DHS funding over politics, that should worry people a lot more than whether their protest sign went viral. Publicly available data does not tell us exactly how many actual terrorists have entered the U.S. in recent years, but it does show a sharp rise in known and suspected terrorist encounters at the border compared with earlier periods. While those threats continue overseas and at home, a different kind of war has been growing inside our own politics, a war of propaganda, paid outrage, and manufactured protest. Part of that war now runs through fake or staged images. In a psychological operations campaign, AI-generated pictures and videos can spread faster than any correction, and if you believe every image you see online, you are volunteering to be somebody else's target audience, the protest industry. Modern democracy is supposed to be about a representative republic. Too often now, it looks more like a social media, cancel culture, peer group-driven, loudest voice popularity contest. The battlefield here is not deserts and airspace. It is news feeds, slogans, and rented crowds. A lot of it is just real-world clickbait, designed to trigger you, farm your outrage, and feed an industry that cashes in while you burn your time and patience. In a single election cycle, campaigns and advocacy groups will now spend well over $10 billion trying to shape what you see and feel about politics, including close to $2 billion just on online ads and millions more paying influencers to just share an opinion. The clickbait is not just headlines. It is AI-polished photos of crowds, flags, burning streets, and eyewitness moments that never really happened. If you do not question the pictures as hard as you question the words, you are fighting the wrong war. And if you are still waiting to hear what the seafood has to do with any of this, hold that thought, because that part comes later. Beneath the imagery of handmade signs and spontaneous crowds, the modern American protest scene has become a sophisticated industry in which big philanthropy, tax-exempt nonprofits, and for-profit vendors work as a single influence system, laundering elite priorities through the language of grassroots democracy. Mega foundations and dark money networks root hundreds of millions of dollars through fiscal sponsors that bankroll pop-up coalitions and advocacy brands that present themselves as organic community movements while relying on professional organizers, communication staff, and legal teams. Those same coalitions regularly hire commercial support, crowd-for-hire firms that can manufacture rallies on demand, PR shops that script the message, and security companies that manage the risk, so that what looks like bottom-up outrage is often a top-down contract-driven operation with a measurable return on investment in media coverage and political pressure. Professional organizers now routinely bolt social media astroturf onto street protest, using fake or lightly staffed accounts to swarm local news threads, seed hashtags, and manufacture the illusion of broad organic outrage at very low marginal cost. When a local story suddenly fills up with angry comments from accounts that seem to live nowhere near your town, with no job history, no local friends, and a dog or flower as the only profile picture, you are probably looking at online astroturfing rather than genuine neighborhood reaction. This is the part that most people do not see. The industry does not just raise awareness, it burns time, energy, and relationships. It turns neighbors into enemies, splits families, and poisons communities over events that were scripted for a news cycle, not for the long haul of living next to each other. The people in the streets may be sincere, but the machine behind them cashes checks, whether your family speaks at Thanksgiving or not. So while people in Iran are in the streets celebrating the winds of change and a chance to be free of a regime that jailed, beat, and killed them, there are people in America protesting and arguing against the military actions that helped make that possible. We are tying ourselves in knots over strikes against a government that has chanted "Death to America" and carried out violence against the U.S. and across the Middle East since 1979, while openly promising more. I am a simple man, but that does not make sense to me. What's next? First, in a civil world, we ought to be able to agree on live and let live. That is called diplomacy. When diplomacy fails, force follows. Over the last 4 decades, Iran and its proxies have killed and maimed Americans again and again, yet we have often gone to war or launched major campaigns against other countries on far less provocation. We invaded Iraq on disputed intelligence and hypothetical future threats, while treating Iran's very real, documented record of killing Americans as a problem to be managed instead of decisively confronted. When it comes to military action, making the call is a lonely job. It is easy to play critic after the fact. History gets written by decisions made in the present, not by the hot takes afterward. We do not know what comes next. Europe and Japan were not rebuilt the day after the war ended, and when the Berlin Wall fell, nobody knew how that story would turn out. Sometimes progress is slow, sometimes it has no patience at all. I was raised by people who lived through the Depression, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. One thing I have noticed, a country that can speak with one voice beats a country splintered into 100 tribes. Andrew Johnson inherited the presidency just days after Lincoln's assassination, with the Civil War barely over, and faced a no-win task of stitching the country back together. Imagine if the Confederates had won, or if North and South had just signed a divorce treaty. We would likely be a collection of weak, third-rate states instead of a superpower. Iran's story stretches back to the beginning of written history through generations of war, hardship, wealth, and collapse. But in the Iran we are talking about today, women are treated as property and can be killed for the smallest hint of defiance. Gays are killed. Americans have been killed. Even before the bombs, protesters filled the streets demanding something better. There are documented cases of security forces charging grieving families bullet fees to get a loved one's body back, with more money demanded when there are more bullet holes. For the people inside Iran who are brave enough to demand change, nothing is guaranteed. They will have to stand up again, and probably again after that, to take their country back and reshape it into whatever kind of nation they want to live in. At that level, this is not about politics, it is about life. One thing is for sure, knocking back Iran's nuclear and military capability by 5 or 10 years may not solve everything, but in a world where a regime openly talks about killing you, buying 5 or 10 years of greater safety is still a win. Real risk versus performed outrage. If people truly want to protest something that kills Americans, they might start with the most dangerous job in the country. It is not a soldier, it is a commercial fisherman. Commercial fishing routinely ranks as one of the deadliest civilian occupations in the United States, with fatality rates many times higher than the average worker and higher than most other jobs people assume are more dangerous. Every year, more fishermen die doing their job than most Americans realize. Yet nobody marches in the streets demanding safer fishing boats or boycotting seafood restaurants. No one stands in Marion Square holding signs that say, "No more dead fishermen." But we all still enjoy shrimp and crab legs without a second thought. That is the part about the seafood. Risk exists everywhere. The difference is that soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines volunteer to carry that risk so the rest of us can argue about it in freedom. Democracy is messy, leadership is harder, and sometimes the people shouting the loudest about saving lives are the ones least willing to understand the price that freedom has always required. P.S. If you like protesting, that is your right to peacefully assemble, and that is okay. But the next time you want to march, maybe give a little space and respect to the soldiers, federal officers, police, and firemen who still have to do their jobs while you are chanting. No one has ever been pulled out of a burning building by a protest sign, and no one has ever been saved in a firefight by a clever slogan. PPS. The failed 1980 desert rescue mission, Operation Eagle Claw, was a costly lesson in both military and political history, and it marked the moment the United States committed to building the greatest special operations capability in the world. From that point on, we trained harder, fought smarter, reset, and improved. Most service members will never fire a shot in combat, but they still matter, because every generation passes down what it learned. When I joined, Vietnam vets were in charge of me and taught us the tactics and hard lessons they had paid for in blood. Those lessons were refined in Desert Storm, then refined again in the long years of the global war on terror, and now inform the tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, for raids from Venezuela to the current fight. Across thousands of missions, known and unknown, soldiers, sailors, and airmen have forged a frontier of new capabilities, and it takes an entire institution, not a single hero, to figure out how to fight the war in front of you. There are times in the military when probably everyone had to do something they did not want to do or agree with, but that was the deal when we signed up. We made a contract with America, the Constitution, and the President of the United States, and it is called following orders. This battle, like all battles, will be hard. No one walks into a fight without knowing they are in a fight. In the words of the band Rush in their song Resist, you can fight without ever winning, but you can never win without a fight. What do you think? Please like, subscribe, and share. Be safe out there. Jim D. Jones.